Phyllis Dauber. Sarah, Rosenbluth.
Read some of the word.
I know everybody.
Well, so now that we're finished with the meeting, I'm gonna bring out the dairy.
Oh, so good.
David, can you hear us?
I can hear half of you.
Hey, all right. Great.
Also, if you haven't signed the thank you card, please do.
All right, so David is seeing what's in the within the upper corner of the screen. There we go. So David is seeing what's in the upper left corner is the view of him. Obviously we see him. Okay. Which means that, and we're on camera up above there, so kind of we're getting the view this way. And some of you got your back to the camera, and some of you are off screen and all that. But it was the best we could do. Our ceilings aren't high enough and couldn't get enough distance. We can't get everybody in the shot. And David can hear you fairly well if you speak loudly. The microphone that's picking up the voice for us is back on the computer, back in the corner. So just by way of introduction, this is Rabbi David Wolfman, friend and colleague. Reed and I have been in communication with Rabbi Wolfman over the last couple of weeks, sharing with him our grant proposal that we put to the Federation that was funded, and asking him for a proposal to work with us as a consultant. It is our collective recommendation that we go ahead and sign the contract with David and start to work, and so that's why we're here tonight, and why David's on screen to begin that work with us, and to share with us tonight over the next hour or so some content that we think is fundamental for us to begin our collaboration with Rabbi Wolfman as our consultant, moving forward our strategy work as a board. Stacy raised a really great question, and I want to share with you my answer to Stacy's question, because I think that she asked for a clarification about the interrelationship between and the interconnectedness between what we're doing as a board with our strategy work, this work with the consultant, this Kivun, Chadash, New Directions project that we got funded through Federation, and what the newly re-energized, re-established religious school committee is doing. So let me just share this with you by way of introduction to the webinar, and then I'm going to turn it over to Rabbi Wolfman. So the board strategy work has led us to work that we are about to commence with our consultant, Rabbi David Wolfman. It's truly one and the same. As we discussed at the second board strategy meeting, we need to collect data for the next phase of our work. And the primary reason to work with a consultant is so that he can facilitate the strategy work of the board, and in particular the work of the about to be established task force, which is fundamentally a working group of the board and maybe a little beyond. We're hoping that Rabbi Wolfman is going to help us to guide us as we put together the task force. So that we can set up the mechanisms to have conversations and collect the information we seek from current and past affiliated temple folks, and at least from some of the unaffiliated that we can identify through cross-referencing of community databases. So tonight's webinar, which is our strategy work tonight, launches this New Directions project, or has the Hebrew name Kivun Chadash, which is the Federation Innovation Grant that we wrote and received. All right, so it's all merging together. Merging the more intensive work with our consultant into the strategy work the board's been doing. When it became clear to us during the fall that we weren't going to be able to do this strategy work alone and the Federation grant became available, it was kind of a synergistic solution, all right, that brings us to this present moment. And tonight's webinar is intended to enable Rabbi Wolfman to teach us some of the backstory that he feels is important for us to know and understand, without doing the leadership summit that was referenced in the document that Sarah distributed to everyone, which was Rabbi Wolfman's full proposal. And the bulk of what he identified there in phase one, to make sure we're all speaking the same language, have a shared understanding as we begin our work together. And this will enable us to work more rapidly into phase two of his proposal. Future strategy meetings of the board should be meaningful contributions as the process develops. If the board, if we want to have success moving forward towards the end goal of launching some innovative experiments in youth and education, then we as a board, and I would say you as board members, will have to be willing to be hands-on in coming months. And that means outside of board meetings to support the task force and the work that is ahead. Maybe hosting parliament meetings, making phone calls, visits, facilitating conversations, having one-on-ones. The timeline anticipates that we would have enough data to start trying innovations next year based on what we find out. This is certainly my hope of what will come of the board's work, and we'll see if we can get there. In the meantime, the Religious School Committee has been given the green light to explore ideas and innovative approaches on a smaller scale. They're the ones seriously considering, for example, the viability of the Skype one-on-one Hebrew in lieu of Wednesday afternoon religious school for 3rd and 6th grade. Maybe with, and then combined perhaps with a once-a-month Judaic arts extension program on Sundays, maybe with parents or without. The Finance Committee has been submitted a budget that reflects this idea. We'll have to see if the finances are viable, if the committee in consultation with parents and families decide to recommend this as a course of action for the fall. But I hope the Religious School Committee doesn't feel that they have to wait for the board to finish the New Directions project in order to do anything. We kind of need to be moving forward on both fronts simultaneously. And who knows? We may find a viable and workable experiment, or we may find it's exactly what we should not do. Right? Only time and trial and error will determine that. But I think we're going to learn a lot from the conversation and the decision-making about it and the experience itself if we decide to. So that's kind of my view of how this all fits together. I hope that you share that view of kind of the synergy that's happening. We don't feel that we're going at cross purposes or limiting each other in any way. With all that as kind of a background, I want to turn it over to Rabbi Wolfman, who's going to present to us. You can see the same thing on either screen. So you can look this way or you can look that way, but then we can also see each other.
We're very high tech.
No, we're not very high tech. We're just like, we're being creative. This is the first time we've done this, David. So hopefully it's going to be fun.
Yeah, that was sarcasm.
You are very high tech. I've done Skype sessions before, but I've never been on multi-screen, so I'm honored tonight. Reed, would you turn around so I can see your face? It's a pleasure to meet you finally face to face.
Nice to meet you, Rabbi.
Well, greetings from Lexington, Massachusetts, where it is once again snowing. You're giving me, and look at you sitting there, you're waving yourself with a paper, like to make me feel good. Really very kind of you. I want to thank Reed and Rabbi for inviting me to join on this endeavor, because as you're going to hear in a moment, this has become a passion of mine. I have been working with congregations the vast majority of my rabbinate. I've been a rabbi just 30 years. And for 18 of it, I served as a regional director for the Union for Reform Judaism. And only in the last 4 years have I started to consult on my own, because I felt that there's too much work to be done to leave the world of consulting. The majority of the work that I used to do was on managing organizational change and transition. And I am finding client after client, organizations and congregations are looking to break the mold. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
We just blipped out for a minute, but don't worry about it.
It was stable on the
It
laptop.
was just the video, not the audio. You're fine.
We're good. Keep going.
So was I max headroom for a while?
Yes.
Everyone who just left, just dated yourselves. Congregations across the country are trying to find out how can we fix what we have. And I want to start by just sharing a story with you at the risk of turning this into something very heavy for a moment. I was on my way, this was when I was a regional director, and I was driving down to a congregation who was in the midst of serious conflict, serious. As you'll see later, you'll understand it was level 4, or maybe even, it was level 4 conflict. And I needed to be there like I needed a hole in the head. It was a cold, rainy night. I just was not in the mood. As I got closer to the synagogue, I noticed that all of the lights were out in the neighborhood. And there was a power outage, and I was feeling, oh yes, there lives a God. Now I don't have to be here. And what I found, much to my surprise, is a full parking lot. At the door to the shul was the president of the congregation holding a flashlight. He walked me into the synagogue. It was very quiet, very dark. And when we got into the meeting room, there I saw one of the most haunting and beautiful sights I've ever seen. the entire board of trustees and the rabbi sitting at the table with hundreds and hundreds of candles lit. Every Chanukiah, every menorah, every yahrzeit, every Shabbat candle they can find was lit. And the room was at the same time beautiful and haunting. And so I sat down at the head of the table and I shared with them that I couldn't help but to compare that black and white photograph that we all carry in our brain of the elders in the shtetl, you know, sitting with their long gray beards with the weight of the Jewish community on their shoulders, trying to figure out what are they going to do to help carry this Jewish community forward. And I remarked to them, as I'm going to remark to you, that you are them. It's colorful. It's not black and white. You don't have all long dark beards, and you're surrounded by 2 HD TV sets. But the analogy holds. The weight of the future of the Jewish community sits on your shoulders. You're the ones in the mantle of leadership now. I, for one, find that terribly exciting during a time of change. So excuse me while I fiddle a little. I'm going to share my screen so you can see. Rabbi, you have to help me with this.
Down in the middle.
Got it?
You got it. There you go.
All right. And how we doing?
We're good, but you're showing us presentation mode.
Yeah.
Both screens.
Pardon me?
We're seeing both. Go to show slideshow rather than presentation mode.
Got it. That means I have to stop sharing for a second. You know, something happens. You hit 55 and all of a sudden you can't do the things you used to be able to do, right?
I do the same things. I just change.
Well, teenager. How's that?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Share screen and then bottom middle. Okay. Now show presentation. Perfect.
All right. You know, when I was a regional director back in the 80s and the computers were brand new, we used to get phone calls from synagogues all over the region saying, our computer system doesn't work. What do we do? And we used to say, when does Hebrew school start? They would say 4. We said, grab a kid, he'll fix it for you.
That's right.
So at any rate, I've been working on a theory for the past several years that I have called Judaism 5.0. And when Reed and your rabbi called me and sent me the paperwork on Kivun Chadash, we're talking about the very, very same thing. So what I want to do is, this is to really justify what you're feeling and to justify where you're going and why you're not alone. However, I do think that you're on the cutting edge, which makes me want to jump on board all the more. So I'm going to call this presentation From Moses to the Birthright Generation. And I want to remind you that Moses was someone who followed instructions. The birthright generation is a generation where you get everything for free. In 1899, Mark Twain wrote a piece on the Jew. And he says, you know, I don't get why the Jew is still here. Kingdoms, peoples, palaces have all risen to try to get rid of the Jew. But they're all gone and the Jew is still here. So his last sentence of this magnificent piece, he says, all things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality? And I'd like to suggest that the secret to our immortality is we know when it's time for a change. Judaism has always been flexible. This is why our Talmud is called the oral law, because it was never meant to be written down and codified, but to be shared and expanded. In Orthodoxy, even in conservative Jews, I'm sure you've heard the word halacha or halacha. It's traditional Jewish law. It means the way to go. As Reformed Jews, we know that halacha is not the only way to go. It is a way to go. And maybe now it's a time for a Kivun Chadash, a new direction. And to quote your own proposal, reimagining how we empower our youth and our families. Because now it's no longer the 1960s and 70s where we have to build a room for our children to go to, the youth lounge, the Boys and Girls Club. Our kids now don't need a room because they're virtually connected to their world 24/7. And for any of you with teenagers or middle schoolers at home, you know what I mean. They sleep with their iPhones connected to the wall right in their own bed with them. So I'd like to share with you what I have found and what I find to be most impactful. It's going to start with a study of generations. The Great Generation, these are people who were born between 1925 and 1942. The most important thing about this generation to know is that they are proud. They were hardworking. They created the very institutions and structures that we have today, our synagogues, our movement, our JCCs, all of our social institutions. The Great Generation, in their day while they were working, and even now as they're volunteering, are team players. I fall into this next group, the baby boomers. We were born from 46 to 64, right after World War II. And what we said to our parents and grandparents was, great job building the institutions that we have, but the world isn't yet perfect. There's women's equality. There is injustice with races. We would find anything to try to change, and we were social activists. Listen, I was born and I was raised right across the George Washington Bridge in New Jersey, and once a week we would cut school and take a bus across the George Washington Bridge and take a train to the United Nations, and we'd protest. Didn't matter what we were protesting. We just went to protest because that's what baby boomers did. We wanted to make the world a better place. We were also associated with privilege, and two things that are very special about us that you need to know. One is right now, baby boomers, we're at our peak level of income. The other thing you need to know is that we tend to think of ourselves as pretty special because our parents told us we were, and we are pretty special. So we baby boomers continue joining these organizations and institutions, even though we didn't.
David, we didn't get the second reason. Our HDMI switch clipped out, according to our tech expert.
So what do we need to say?
Go back.
You got peak level of income. What was the second place where the baby boomers are?
Baby boomers are at our peak level of income, and also this is the first generation where we thought of ourselves as special because our parents told us we were special. And that empowered us to do quote unquote special things. The Gen Xers came around. These are people born in 65 to 79. And this is important because Gen Xers are starting to join our boards of trustees, and Gen Xers are also starting to be our rabbis. And Gen Xers are also, they're also adding to the large number of Jews who are not affiliated anymore. Gen Xers are very highly educated. They have balanced lives, or they seek balanced lives, and they put their family first. While baby boomers are at their highest level of income, Gen Xers are at their highest level of volunteerism. Gen Xers also, for the first time, are not attached to institution. What do I mean by that? I can still see a picture of you on the screen. How many of you, by a raise of hands, are either baby boomers or Great Generation? Okay, I'm amongst you. We will happily pay $2,500 to join a synagogue that we will never go to. We are totally complacent and happy spending $2,000 a year for the gym that we never go to. We are attached to institution, and we're loyal to institution. Gen Xers are less loyal to institution. The other thing that I didn't put on the slide that you need to know, do we have any Gen Xers in the room? Can you raise your hand? Gen Xers carry the largest debt on school ever. So Gen Xers are coming into parenthood already with a mortgage-sized debt just for school. And that's something very important to keep in mind. Now, here are my kids, the millennials, between 1980 and 2000. These kids we call the 9/11 generation. These kids were born with a PDA in their hands, with an iPhone in their hands. They're confident, they're connected, and they're ready for change because they're used to change every day. As a matter of fact, they wake up and they find out that there's a new download to their software, which will look different, and they're cool with that. The sociologists call them the me generation. I call them the birthright generation, where everything is for free. Whereas Gen Xers had less of an institutional need to belong, millennials don't need it at all. Millennials belong simply because everything is a click away. If a millennial wants to see a Shabbat song session at camp, it'll be streamed live. They'll get it online for free. Now, how does the study of generations jive with this Judaism 5.0? Let me take you through 5,000 years of Jewish history in a few minutes. Judaism 1.0 is the Judaism of the Bible. It's the Judaism that we were taught in Hebrew school: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. It's prophet-centered. Judaism 1.0 was Judaism through the prophet. Judaism 1.0 ended when a guy named Solomon builds a temple in Jerusalem. And by doing so, he got rid of the prophet-centered Judaism. Now, it's temple-centered Judaism. Now, what do we have? We changed. We now have the centrality of worship. You just can't pray where you are. Now you have to schlep to Jerusalem. Not only do you have to schlep to Jerusalem, but you have to bring your furs or whatever you trade. By the way, that's money. Because what did they do? They traded them. They got their money. They traded that money for silver, traded it then for shekels. They went to the next store. They bought a turtle dove or a lamb, and they went up for a holy barbecue on the temple. There was a priesthood, a caste system, and money is introduced because what do you think these sacrifices were? They were dues, right? God wanted the blood and the fat. Who ate the meat? The priesthood ate the meat. So Judaism 2.0 was Judaism through the centrality of worship and the sacrificial cult. But in the year 70, Judaism 2.0 came to a crumbling end when the temple was destroyed. And so we had to leave. And we went all over the world, but most of us went to Eastern Europe, where we gave birth to Judaism 3.0. Judaism 3.0 is Fiddler on the Roof Judaism. Shtetls are formed, communities are formed. The cheder, the mikvah, and individual shuls opened up. What did we do? What did we bring with us from Jerusalem? We brought with us the mikvah. But the mikvah was no longer used just for ritual purity. Now, the mikvah was used to determine where one community ended and one community began. We built a mikvah, and when it was too far to walk to the mikvah, we built another mikvah, and Minsk was built. And then we built another mikvah, and Pinsk was built, and Anatevka was built, and Chelm was built. What did we do in Judaism 3.0? We invented things. We invented the cheder. We needed a place to teach our children. We invented the shul. We no longer had the temple, so we had to create small temples where we could all pray together. We invented prayer, because no longer did we have the sacrificial cult. And we invented the rabbi. We invented the cantor. We also invented a new language, Yiddish, art, music, literature, great learning. Judaism 3.0 was thriving until when? The Holocaust, where most of us were killed. And those of us who weren't killed went all over the world. And again, we went into exile. And we went all over the world, but most of us went to North America. And in North America, we now have Judaism by membership. Let's just review for a second. Judaism 1.0 was Judaism through the prophet. Judaism 2.0 was Judaism through the centrality of worship and the sacrificial cult. When the temple was destroyed, we went all over the world. Most of us went to Eastern Europe, and Judaism 3.0 was invented, where it was Judaism through community. And when Judaism 4.0 was burnt, Judaism 3.0 was burnt, Judaism 4.0 began, and the Great Generation built a community for us. We wanted to both integrate and assimilate into North American life, and we wanted to retain our Jewish identity. So what did they do? They built institution. What makes you a Reformed Jew? A membership card. What makes you conservative? A membership card. All I have to do to become a conservative Jew today is join the shul in Lexington, and voila, I'm a conservative Jew. We've reintroduced money, and now we have membership. We built for the first time, we've never had this before, we have a strong Jewish diaspora and a strong, vibrant state of Israel. And that relationship is getting very precarious right now. In Judaism, in the beginning of 4.0, we were all very, very strong Zionists. And now we have children who don't have that relationship either with the Holocaust or with the underdog status of Israel. And in Judaism 4.0, again, we invented a new language, modern Hebrew, English. We invented words like Shabbat or Good Shabbos, which is a combination of German, Yiddish, Hebrew, and English. We've created new art, new music. Judaism 4.0 invented Debbie Friedman and Kol Beseder and Rick Recht. So if Judaism 4.0 is Judaism through membership, I believe that Judaism 4.0 is coming to an end. Why do I think that? I think that because I see that the Gen Xers and the millennials themselves are now becoming entering positions of leadership, both lay leadership, which is more important, and rabbinic professional leadership, which is to a lesser extent important. These people don't need organizations to feel belong. They can just pick up their iPhone or their iPad and they can connect to any group in the world for free. At 7:15 this evening, I'm doing a Skype board call with you in St. Petersburg, Florida. At 10:15 tonight, I'm having a Skype presentation with the Reformed Jews in Kehilat Shanghai in Shanghai, China. How can I be the consultant to the congregation in China? It's going to, the effort I'm giving to talk with you this evening is the same effort that I'm putting in to speak to the Jews of Shanghai. So what's Judaism 5.0 going to look like? I have no idea, but I have some signs. I want to tell you a story. I'm a child of the URJ camp movement. I went to Eisner camp. Anybody here go to the union camps or have kids who've gone there? Raise your hand. Okay, so you know, the kids come home gaga, right?
David,
yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. I'm going to try and switch from a wireless connection to a wired
It's
connection.
not the Wi-Fi. The laptop showing on the screen. It's your HDMI.
The
laptop screen's
the
fine.
switch is going through?
Yeah.
Is it because of power or is it just?
It's just it's splitting the signal, and the signal is weak when you split it. So if you move it to one TV, it probably won't happen anymore. So if you take that one off,
Take that TV off and just do
put
the
the
over here.
HDMI right into the computer.
Okay.
it'll probably fix
Bear with me, David. Getting advice here.
There we go.
All right, we're going to try it now. Go.
Okay, where did I?
Sound is coming from here, so now where's the sound?
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. He started talking like nothing's coming out. Hold on.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
4, 5, 6.
Okay. Okay, go.
Where did I lose you?
China.
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 Where did I lose you?
China.
10:15 in China. 7.
Got it. Okay. So my favorite Jewish quote now actually comes from the book of Fiddler on the Roof, because Tevye was right when he said, Golda, it's a new world. Listen, you can't see me right now, but I have my iPhone in my hand. Okay, hold on.
We actually do see you.
Oh, you do see me.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're a little square on our screen.
Hold on. Siri, what is the Torah?
Here's some information.
So what Siri has just given me is about 400 different links. I have a picture of a Torah. I can push a button and she'll chant Torah trope. She's also linked me to the difference between Mishnah Torah, Sefer Torah, Simchat Torah, Ora Torah, and Torah Bright. So we don't even need the rabbi anymore to answer questions. So we're now in a new world of interconnectivity, and that's what I think is bringing down 4.0. So, Rabbi, you see me, not the slide?
You see both.
Oh, you see both. Okay. So I want to tell you a story about Judaism 5.0. So I was a song leader at Eisner Camp, and Shabbat was unbelievable. You've all heard the story if you know about Jewish summer camp. I would come into the dining room. I would stand on the stage, which were 2 milk cartons upside down. I would take out my guitar without any microphone, and I would sing my heart out. And 750 kids and counselors dressed in white would sing toward me, and it was unbelievable. It was an incredible high. It was the highlight of everybody's week. At the end of song session, everyone would run out of the dining room to go down to the quad for Israeli dancing, and there Jews were made, right? That started my wanting to be a rabbi. Years later, not so many years ago, as a regional director, I went to Eisner Camp to visit, and I went on a Shabbat. Now, they had just built a new building, which I know you have at Coleman too, which is called the Beit Am. It's an octagonal building. And now song session is in the Beit Am. And what did I see? When I went to the Beit Am, I saw the stage in the middle of the room. And all the kids started to file around this round stage. On the stage were 4 song leaders with their backs toward each other, with wireless microphones on their heads, and their guitars were wirelessly hooked up to the PA system. On 2 sides of the ceiling were PowerPoint presentations of the words to the song. And song session started, and I was amazed. It looked like a Jewish rock concert. The oldest kids were right up to the stage, and they're jumping up and down and singing. Over there, I saw a group of 8th grade girls in a clump singing to each other. Over there, I saw a group of 7th grade boys in a clump singing to each other. Over there, I saw boys and girls flirting. Over there, I saw counselors with young kids taking them dancing on a chain type of dance. And I realized that I couldn't hear anybody sing. I just heard the loud, distorted voices and guitars of the amplified song leaders. I also saw no unity. I saw different groups having different experiences. And I said, oh my gosh, this is the internet. They're having different experiences with a shared hub. Now, being a former song leader, what did I do? I put my arms like this. I leaned back on the door and said, I can do this better. This is silly. This has got to stop. This is not going to make Jews. This is just like a rock concert. This has got to stop. And I judged them. And then when the song session was over, they all ran past me. And what were they saying as they ran past me? This was the best Shabbat of my entire life. If they would only do this at home, oh my gosh, how can I ever explain this to my friends? And that's when I realized that my job should not have been being in that room judging them. My job should have been being outside building a bridge to a Judaism 5.0 that they're going to build. If King Solomon and Herod had the right to change Judaism from the prophets, if Tevye had the right to change Judaism from the temple period, if my grandparents and great-grandparents had the right to reform Judaism again from the shtetl life to what we have today, then why don't our children have the right to adapt Judaism to what's best for them? If we're going to do that, we're going to be going into an area that I call being comfortable holding our discomfort. My grandmother would probably roll over in her grave if she saw men and women praying together. My great-grandfather, who was a Talmudic scholar, would roll over in his grave if he saw an Asian rabbi like they have at Central Synagogue in Manhattan. And heck, we even have our first transgendered rabbi going to rabbinical school now. So we're now going to enter into an area that I call being comfortable holding our discomfort, because our kids are going to be building something that's going to be right for them, or we have to start them on their way. So we're going to be going into an area of conflict, and conflict can either be good or bad. I'm going to talk about how we can use conflict for our good. This is something called the 6 levels of conflict. The first level is a problem to solve. It's healthy conflict, and it's win-win. A problem to solve is, hey, David, can you stop talking? Our video isn't working right now. Sure, I stopped talking. You've got the video to work, and now we solved the problem. We're moving on. The next level of conflict is disagreement. It's also healthy conflict, and it's also win-win. Disagreement is where you and I may disagree on something, But our relationship is more important than the issue. So one or the other of us is going to agree to disagree. We're both going to agree to disagree, and we're going to choose one way or another. This is from Talmud. Elu ve'elu devarim Elohim chaim. They're both good ways, but you have to choose one. The third level of conflict is called contest. This also is healthy conflict, but for the first time, it's win-lose. In level 3 conflict, someone's going to lose. So why is it healthy? Well, the New England Patriots played against the Denver Broncos, and we lost. No one killed anybody. They just lost. We're done. That's it. The season's over. Hillary Clinton lost last night. She didn't run out of the race. People who voted for her aren't leaving the country and moving to Canada. They're still here. That's a win-lose. And I want to share with you a story that happened to me with level 3, which was really eye-opening for me. Do you remember Bush v. Gore?
We're Florida.
Oh, right. Sorry, hanging chads. Okay. I was in the back of a New York City taxi cab going to the airport. And the news was on, and they said, we interrupt this program for a special news bulletin. The Supreme Court has voted to support the Secretary of State of Florida, and our next president is George Bush. With that, the cab driver, who had dark skin and a turban, pulled the car off to the side and turned around and looked at me through the glass with sweat beating down his cheeks, shaking, saying, what do we do? Where do we go? And I said, we go to the airport. Why? And he said, because in his country, when half the country disagrees, they take to the streets. And I said, well, because in my country, when half of us disagree, we forget in a week. So level 3 conflict is when there's a winner and a loser. When Barack Obama was elected, no one moved to Canada. Now, of course, there are jokes. I have a colleague in Vancouver. Do you know Dan Moskowitz? Michael?
Yes, we do.
All right. So anyway, so he sent me an article. He sent me a political cartoon saying that the Canadians are building a fence on the Canadian-American border to protect Americans from moving over there when Trump is elected, and they're going to make us pay for it. Okay, level 4 conflict is fight or flight, or what I call my way or the highway. It's unhealthy, and it's lose-lose. This is where someone says, you're going to do what? You're going to teach Hebrew over Skype? Are you kidding me? That is so lame and so watered down Judaism, I'm out of here. And they quit their membership. That's level 4, fight or flight, or what I call my way or the highway. And level 5, I've only seen once in my career, intractable situation. It's when you want the other party wiped off the face of the planet. Now you'll notice that I said there are 6 levels here. So here's the 6th level. It's level 0, depression. It's unhealthy. It's lose-lose. And my friends, it's where the majority of congregations are today. Here's an example of depression. Kids don't come to Hebrew school because we can't compete with soccer. Oh, well, maybe we should go down to 1 day a week. Nah, that's silly. Let's just keep things the way they are. That's level 0. You are on level 1. And this is exactly where we need to be over the next 6 months. We need to be on a problem to solve. We have a problem. We are losing to the soccer gods. We have a problem. The millennial and the children below them, they're now called Generation Z. They're the most over-programmed generation that has ever been born in America. They are doing things all the time. And guess what? They're no longer on schedules. Their schedules bounce all over the place because they have this to instantly change their lives. So what we need to do is to stay in levels 1, 2, and 3 contest. And I'll leave this with this story. You know how you make pasta? You put it in a pot of water and you turn up the heat. It's called raising conflict. If you don't turn on the heat, it's just going to wilt. So you turn on the heat, and after a while, it's going to get to a roaring boil. When it does, we lower the heat. If we don't lower the heat, it's going to boil over. It's going to go to level 4, maybe even level 5. It's certainly going to make a mess. We don't turn it off because it won't finish cooking. We lower the heat, and that's called managed conflict. And we are going to have to manage conflict here. What does this mean for Hebrew teachers of a class if we're doing Skype? What does this mean for the position of religious school director? Does my job change? What does it mean for us who've spent $750,000 for a school wing 10 years ago? There's so many ancillary questions that each one of the new questions are going to raise. Rather than depress them, what we need to do is start with level one and really wrestle with these questions. The best definition of leadership that I've ever heard came from a Methodist minister by the name of Gil Rendell, and he said the best definition of leadership is listen, shape, share. Listen to your constituency. Listen to their stories. Listen to their narratives. Listen to the people who've left the congregation in the last 3 years. Listen to the people who've quit the congregation after their youngest became bar and bat mitzvah. Listen to your friends who are Jews who have never been affiliated. Listen to the people who go every Friday night, who go to Torah study and consider Beth-El to be a cornerstone of their lives. Listen without judgment and listen without apologetics. Then shape it. Shape it into the Torah that you know to be true. Once you understand what they're saying, you can shape it into the vision that you have of your congregation and that's true to your mission. And then share. Share it back with them in their own language, with their own narratives, so you can act on it and they can buy into it. Everyone say Mazel Tov. Thank you. I'm the handsome guy all the way to your left. In the center is my daughter and her husband. They got married in May. Jen and Jesse are the poster children of the success of the reform and conservative movements. Jen is the daughter of a rabbi. Jesse is the son of a conservative educator. Jen and Jesse were both raised in homes that practiced Judaism with joy. Jen and Jesse both belonged to synagogues and attended. Jen and Jesse both were educated as Jews. Jen went through supplementary religious school. Jesse went to Solomon Schechter Day School. They both went to youth group. They both went to summer camp, Jewish summer camp. They both went to Israel when they were 16 on a nifty and USY trip. They both attended Hillel in college. They both went on Birthright. And where did they meet, friends? J-Date. They even met on J-Date. They got married, and now they both teach at Solomon Schechter Day School. Are they going to have a Jewish home? They already do. Will they support Jewish causes? They already do. Do they support Israel? They love Israel. Do they want their children to be raised as Jews? Without a doubt. Will they spend $2,500 and join a synagogue? I'm not so sure. And it's not because they don't care. It's because they're 28. And they don't know yet what life will be with children, but they do know this. Whereas baby boomers are comfortable with complacency and will pay $2,500 a year to a synagogue we don't go to, they won't. When I ask millennials like them, will you pay $36 to go to an awesome Shabbat service that's produced and has lights and sound? They go, yeah. If I say, will you pay $500 to go to a 3-session adult education program that's either led by an author or a top-notch professor at a university? They go, absolutely. When I say, will you spend $3,600 and send your, in the future, children to a cutting-edge, meaningful educational program that changes week by week, month by month, and only has cutting-edge stuff? They go, absolutely. Well, they've spent more than $2,500. So we have to find out how to reach these millennials and these Gen Xers, especially the ones that are not in your synagogue now and the ones that will leave. So what's our process going to be? Phase one, and thanks to the nudging of Reed and your rabbi, we can push phase one quickly. This is where we're going to build upon your previous work. We're going to get on the same page, which was tonight is about, and we have to do a DNA, what I call a DNA search. A DNA search is really quite selfish for me. I understand that I'm walking into the middle of a conversation, so I need to get to know you. I need to get to know the DNA of your congregation. I will do that by having one-on-one conversations telephonically or Skype. I'll do that by meeting with small groups on the telephone. And during my first visit, or each of my visits, I'll meet with a different group of people so I can hear their narratives. Phase 2, we'll be able to now start in the winter and go into the spring. This is our listening campaign. This is where we're going to have focus groups, and the focus groups are going to be divided into like-minded people. We'll be speaking with the people who have totally drunk the Kool-Aid and love your congregations. We're going to speak with people who don't come. We're going to try to find people who've left the congregation in the last 3 years and ask them if we can meet with them without a hint of us wanting them back. We just want to learn from them. We're going to talk to past presidents. We're going to talk to parents. We're going to talk to kids themselves. And we're also going to be having, I'm going to skip down for a second, what I call purposefully planned one-on-ones. This is when we're going to identify key individuals in the congregation that you think can give us more information by meeting alone and whom we can get on board by meeting alone. We're going to have an I Wish project. The I Wish project is an internet-based project. It's basically an email account. It will be something like tbeiwish@gmail.com. And we're going to blanket the whole community and let them know that we'd like you to send an email and answer in 3 sentences or less. Regarding the youth program at Temple Beth-El, I wish, and we're going to get some anonymous, free-thinking what they wish. It's going to. We'll formulate the question together, but I use that just as a generalization. They'll all come to me. I won't know people because I'm anonymous. I'll take all of them, make sure that I get rid of all the email addresses and send it back to your steering committee, where we're going to be able to see what are people's wishes. This is very unscientific, but we find it to be some of the richest information will come through this. What are people thinking? What do they wish? You know, I wish I don't have to go to Hebrew school. I wish I can learn on the internet. I wish I can partner with a kid in Shanghai. Who knows what they're going to say? They haven't invented it yet. Parents, everyone else will be able to do this too, and it'll be amazing to see what we pull in. Toward the beginning of the spring, we will then have what I call an innovation workshop. This is when we're going to bring all the parties together. We're going to invite anyone who would like to attend. All the information from the focus groups, all the information from the I Wish projects, all the data collected from our purposefully planned one-on-ones, we will put into categories, and we'll have tables set around a room with all these categories. And we're going to ask people in the most innovative way to just think outside of the box. We'll prime them so any obstacle I can possibly imagine, we're going to remove so they can just dream and dive deep. Once we finish that, which will be spring and summer, now your steering committee is going to be able to know what all the voices are. We're going to count, by the way, all the individual voices we hear. So by the end of this, you'll be able to say, we heard 250 voices, or we've heard 300 voices. And here's what you have said, and we're going to use their language and their narratives. We're going to put it into the best practices that we have found from across the country, and we'll make a strategy for Kivun Chadash. We'll share our story. We'll share our story both internally, and what I love about your proposal, and this is another reason why you're cutting edge, is because you're going to share it. You're going to freely share it with other synagogues and other Jewish organizations in your area. That also, sharing your story and sharing your method is also going to bring people because they're going to be very interested. We're going to leverage healthy conflict for good. That's how we're going to create some of our new ideas. But the second bullet is the one I wanted to concentrate on here. As I said in my proposal, there's a difference between change and transition. A change happens in a moment, and it's based in fact. A new program, Kivun Chadash, is change. A new way of learning, Skype, it's change. Transition, though, is not based in fact. It's based in your kishka. It's based in our emotion, which is why I call my practice the human side of change. It's also not based in a moment in time. It's based over a long period of time. Change has 3 parts to it: beginning, middle, and end. We're at the beginning of the change now. Transition has 3 parts, but transition begins with the ending, then goes to the middle, which is the neither here nor there zone, or the yucky zone, or the midbar, if you will. And transition finally ends when there's a new beginning, when there's a new understanding. What we know to be true is that some of the very best changes often fail with poorly managed transitions. And phase 3 is where we're going to have to work on transition. My guess is transition to your consumer, that's your children and your parents, will not be very hard. We'll have to help them transition to the new way of registering, to the new way of thinking of how we're going to prepare for bar and bat mitzvah and all of that. But we are going to have to pay special attention to the people in the workplace, especially the people behind the curtain, the people in your office who have a whole new way that they're going to be processing working with families. We're going to have to work with the teachers who are now going to have new identities. They may have a new job title. That's a change. A new way of teaching is a change. But the transition is their identity, and we'll have to work with them, especially in the school with their teachers and director. It's a new world, Golda. And your synagogue, Temple Beth-El, is going to lead the way in a new direction. I wish I had a template I can give you to say this is the best way to reach young families today. I don't. I do have a template, I think, for how to find out by listening, shaping, and sharing as we move forward together into our new way of teaching. So that's all I got, folks. And I'm going to figure out how to get out of this and take any questions that you may have.
All right. Thank you. You want to say anything? I'm going to open up for questions. What are you going to do?
It was very interesting.
You have to speak loudly because the microphone's over there by the computer.
It's very interesting. This is Reed Silverboard. How you doing? Can you hear?
Yes, I can, loud and clear.
What's the first thing we need to do? Form the committee?
The first thing to do is you have to decide what works best for you. I noticed in the letter that Rabbi sent out today that the board and maybe a few other people will be the strategic planning committee. You have to decide who's going to be the strategic planning committee. I'd like to suggest that you have a job to do. You're already on the board. You have a synagogue to run. So for you to be a committee of the whole, I think will take attention either away from your board work, which you have to continue to do, or you won't be able to give enough attention into the Kivun Chadash endeavor. So I would encourage you to have a strategic committee on Kivun Chadash that has some of you on board and then other people that are not on the board. Have you given some thought to that, Reed?
I've thought about it. I don't know who. I know that we've had at least one volunteer so far who's on the board.
I can't hear. Can someone translate for me?
We don't know yet.
Okay, thank you.
Can you give us some profiles of who types that you think should be sitting on this task force?
Well, let me turn that around by asking you, who's your target audience here? I'm making the assumption it's your religious school population, their parents and teenagers.
And of equal weight and value, the people that we haven't got a clue who they are. I mean, like, we know them by profile, but we don't know them yet by name or face in the southern half of the county.
Excellent. So the first part of your question is easy. The people who, first of all, you want people who have the skills. So you need people who have the know-how about or the context to know what's going on in America today with Jewish education. So your Jewish educator would be a logical person. The person running your religious school, perhaps the chair of your education committee, I would think is also a no-brainer. You may or may not want to consider putting a teacher on this group. The upside is no one knows your congregation better than your teachers. Nobody. Let me pause here for a second. If you think about it, who in your synagogue sees the majority of the members of your synagogue on an ongoing and in-depth way? It's your teachers. They're the ones who see the kids multiple times a week, And they're the ones who also see the parents and how they interact. The teachers and your educator are the ones who are going to be able to identify who are the real potential leaders that you want that are very involved in the school and very involved in their kids' education. Those are some people that you'd also like. I'd also suggest somebody with synagogue memory. You want to create an educational program that doesn't leave anybody behind as well. You also want to make it a size that can remain nimble and flexible, remembering that it's a steering committee and not a decision committee. The decision committee is you, the board. And finally, you might want to consider, and I would look to your rabbi and your educator to identify a high school student who is articulate, mature, and who has the time to do this. The next thing I would, concurrently with making that group, I would ask you to come up with a list of people with whom you think I need to speak to be able to learn who you are. First of all, if there's anybody in the room now in groups of 4 or 5 that would like to have a conference call with me, just so I can hear your impression of the congregation. Where has it touched you profoundly? Where has it missed the mark? Especially when it comes to youth education and young families, because that's what you're looking at. So if you can come up with a list of people that I can speak with, I would be most appreciative of that. And then the other first thing that we have to do is identify a time where I can come down to start these focus groups. There are 2 ways of doing focus groups. The easy way is have me to do them. It's easy because you don't have to learn how to lead a focus group. The reason I don't prefer that is only one can be done at a time. What I'd much rather do is take a cadre of lay leaders and teach them how to facilitate a group such that they don't lead them to any preconceived way, preconceived path. And I have to train a cadre of recorders of who will record everything that happens in that focus group so they can record it in a way that they don't put in their own biases. The reason I prefer that is 1, you get more buy-in because you have lead leaders doing the work. 2, you can have many, many, many more focus groups. There's no reason why you can't have between 15 and 25 focus groups Michael, remind me the size of your congregation?
380 families, units.
Did you say 3?
380.
There's no reason why you can't have between 15 and 25 different focus groups. Furthermore, the last thing a group of unaffiliated Jews or Jews that have left the synagogue want to see is a rabbi leading their focus group. The safest place to have these focus groups are in people's living rooms by asking people who would volunteer to hold a focus group and have them invite their friends to come. When you ask anybody what makes you do anything, it's a phone call from a friend. So if you have friends, you are on the board, if you have friends and you know that some of them are disillusioned with the program, invite them. If you have friends that have left the synagogue, invite them. If you have friends that are unaffiliated, invite them. So does that answer your question?
Yes. How big is your ideal size of task force?
You have to tell me how your congregation works. I like to work with task force between 8 and 10, 12 tops.
The other question I have is, how do we communicate? Should we today, tomorrow, tonight get the word out to our congregation that we've started on this process? And do you have the best suggestion on how to do that?
Okay, can you either say that louder or someone closer to the mic repeat it? Sorry.
How do we communicate to our congregation that we've started on this process?
Oh my gosh, by every way possible. Let me start by, and this is why the DNA search for me is important. How do you communicate with your congregation now?
I mean, we do it the typical way, the newsletter, the emails, but I think the best is the personal relationships.
Okay, can I ask you a personal question? Do you mind?
Yeah.
Okay, what's your name?
Sarah Gottlieb.
Sierra, did you say?
Sarah.
Sarah Gottlieb, David Wolfman, nice to meet you. Sarah, how old are you?
38.
38. Do you read email?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Anybody at that?
Email I read.
Pardon?
I work here. I read my work email.
Oh, that's so not fair.
She's our executive director.
She's the executive director.
Matt will volunteer as the guinea pig.
Okay, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4 to your left. Who's that guy looking at his iPad, his iPhone?
Oh, Mike.
Mike, how old are you?
Well, today I'm 36. In a couple days I'll be 37.
Excellent. Do you read email?
I'm reading it right now.
Okay. So the answer is I would do it through email for sure. I would do it through your Facebook page. Does your temple have a Facebook page?
Yes.
I would absolutely do 2 things with that. Yeah, I would do that through the Facebook page, and I would make sure that your synagogue knows that the only way they're going to get the Facebook page is if they like the Facebook page. I would do it in your bulletin. I would do it by word of mouth, and the younger the person, the more they look at text or other kind of social media devices. So there are programs now where you can do blast texts. So I would get it out in every way possible. I would also spin it as something very exciting, that you're moving in Kivun Chadash in a new direction and you are pledging transparency, which means in your temple bulletin and on your Facebook page, I'd make sure that no less than once a month, that there's something of substance in there about what you've done. Now, what do we share with people? Here's one of David's golden rules. There are 2 things, right? There's a difference between secrecy and confidentiality. Secrets are bad, and they usually lead to pain in people you care about. Confidentiality is an absolute must. You can't reveal any confidences. When you are sitting with a listening session or a one-on-one, we're free to tell their stories, but we're not free to say who they are. If we're talking about radically changing, I'm making this up because we don't know. If we're talking about radically changing something in our school program, that has to stay confidential because the lives of the people who work in the school program are on the line. And even if they're not on the line, they're going to think that they're on the line. Am I being downsized? Am I going to be what if I don't know how to use Skype? How am I going to teach Hebrew? So we have to be very thoughtful in what information we share, but we can't be secretive. We have to share everything that we can share, but no more. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Let me ask you a question. If we have 10 teachers, they're all very part-time, why can't we bring all of them in on this fully? Because and then they can be part of it rather than keep everything confidential from them.
Well, first of all, that's a wonderful question. And I don't have an answer to that. I'm reading a book now called The Beautiful Question. And it's all about how you ask your questions. It's a great question. What if all the teachers who are part-time were involved? Are they members too, or are they not members?
Almost all are members.
Okay. That changes the story. What would it look like? What if we brought in all of our teachers who are part-time? And they were part, because they're stakeholders, they were part of the decision. Now we have to ask another question, and we're going over our time, and you have to tell me when to stop. Can I just rewind and just do a very fast teaching? There was an article recently published a few months ago called Who Owns the Church? When you talk to board members, and you say what their job is, 9 out of 10 times, the word fiduciary is going to come up. They think the word fiduciary means to honor the bottom line. But in fact, the word fiduciary means to protect the interest of the owner. So if I sit on the board of Apple Computer and I own a glass company, if Apple is making a new computer and needs a newfangled type of glass, I have to vote on what will be best for the shareholders of Apple, not my company, the glass company, right? So the question is, who owns the temple? It's certainly not the rabbi. It's certainly not the board. So conventional wisdom would say it's the members of the synagogue. But I'm here to tell you it's not the members of the synagogue. The members of the synagogue are the highest authority, but they don't own the synagogue, and I'll prove it. If, God forbid, you were to close Beth-El and monetize the building and sell the Torah scrolls and all the silver, you would not split up the proceeds by all of its members. What would you do? You would look to your mission, and the last decision the board would make would be, how do we dispense this money? What would our mission have us do? So the article says, and I couldn't agree with it more, and I wish I made it up because it's brilliant, that your mission statement owns the synagogue. The membership is the authority. You can change your mission statement, but the mission statement owns the synagogue. So if we get these teachers on this steering committee, then we have to make sure that any decisions that they make are keeping with the best interest of the owner, which is the mission statement. It can't be, but I'll be out of a job, or I can't teach on Skype. And that, by the way, becomes a level 1 conflict. We can say, let's make believe Sarah is a teacher, part-time member of the synagogue in her late 50s, and she doesn't know how to use computers. We have to be able to say to her, Sarah, we have a level 1 issue here. We would gain a lot from your wisdom because few people know the congregation, and certainly our students, the way you do. We're also concerned that we don't know what the outcome is going to be, and we don't want that to cloud any decisions that you can make. How do you respond to that? If she can then have a very open conversation with that and share with you her fears, but agree to put them aside to help the mission, then I say bring them on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but my basic question was not that they all should be on the steering committee, just we should just share all the information with them. That's what I was trying to
Oh, yes. And by the way, they should be a focus group.
Shouldn't the preschool be part of the focus groups as well?
Well, not the kids, but the parents, yeah.
Well, you get some really interesting
We have very
answers.
articulate 2-year-olds.
You know what guys, I told you this book that I'm reading right now. Let me just tell you about the chapter that I just read. Do you know that children from the age of 2 to 5 ask for an average of 40,000 questions, right? But from kindergarten on, they ask fewer and fewer questions until they get to elementary school, where they've learned that you don't want to ask a question, you want to give an answer.
Right.
And for some reason, we adults have forgotten the art of what 2 to 5-year-olds know, to freely ask an inquisitive question of wonderment. And that's what we need to do.
All right. Any other last questions?
All right. So first step is try to make the steering committee and the chairs of that. 2, identify people with whom I should speak that you think I can learn a lot from. And this is one way. This is how I can learn about the DNA of Beth-El. And 3 is offline. We should identify a time for my first visit so we can really hit the road running.
All right, very good. Thank you.
You also may want to come up with a logo of Kivun Chadash, so it's recognizable whenever you put it in the bulletin, whenever a flyer goes home, whenever there's a Facebook posting that people. I see you had a logo. I don't know if it's still relevant or not, but that Jewish star with that multicolored Jewish star, is that your logo?
Charles.
Put our current logo in your presentation.
I understand it. You may want to come up with a logo just for Kivun Chadash. So people, when they see that they know it's about this new endeavor.
Got it. Okay, great. All right, so we will we'll stay in close touch and move forward. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good night, everybody.
David, before you turn off, can you share the slides?
Yeah, you want me? I'll email them to you.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to ask you though that not to use them for outside of Kivun Chadash. Okay.
No, just in case anybody wanted to reference any of the things I saw on the screen, but didn't.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, on their way.
Share it with our federation who is working with us on this.
So Sarah just asked if we can share the slides with the Federation, which is our collaborating partner. So again, with the same caveat.
Yeah, the answer is yes. We just have to make sure that that I retain ownership of them. But absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
I'm not worried. We're all on the same team.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure. Well, like I told you about the partner, right?
Like the partner, exactly right. By the way, you totally made my day with that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's fine. Good.
All right.
All right. Good night, David. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Yes.